writing books, that may take a while.
Mhm.
The life journey of becoming a better human, that's going to take a lifetime. But the third thing, like I made a decision. I was like, I'm going to do this in a year. And once I made the decision, that was it. Um,
Nice,
Things
nice.
started opening up. Doors started opening up. Opportunities. I started meeting people that had already done these things. Like they were coming back from Thailand and Indonesia, and I was just meeting them sometimes randomly on the street or in a bar or something. But um, I think that there's something to be said. Once you put something in motion, you
Yes.
start to pull that energy towards you. You start to attract that thing that you want.
Salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our ongoing goal is to help our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. Totally thrilled to have you join us today and appreciate you taking the valuable time to spend it here with us as we continue on our journey of audacious living. And when you think about that, living an audacious life is like embarking on a journey through uncharted territory, where intentional goal setting is your compass and taking the road less traveled serves as your map. Just like Scott Allan's journey to Japan, sometimes the most fulfilling experiences come from stepping out of our comfort zone and embracing the unknown. Scott is a prolific writer and inspirational figure in the fields of psychology and self-help. With over 40 books published under his belt in 17 languages, Scott's work focuses on empowering individuals to overcome procrastination, set intentional goals, and ultimately live their best lives. In this episode, Scott shares his personal journey of intentional goal setting, overcoming self-doubt, and taking bold steps to pursue his dreams. His story serves as a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and unwavering belief in oneself. So if you're ready to go, let's turn our conversation over to Scott Allan. Enjoy. Greetings, Scott. Thank you for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast. Thank you for making the time to do this, my friend.
Well, thanks for getting up early and having me on the show. It's great to be here.
No problem. I mean, you're in Japan. What time exactly is it in Japan right now?
It is 7:10 p.m. Monday.
Not bad, not bad. Okay, and I'm on the other end of the other end of the spectrum here, about 6 a.m., but that's okay. Like I said, I'm an early riser. That's how we like to do things. So hey, that's how he is. So here on the podcast, look, we spend a lot of time just encouraging individuals to sort of, live their best audacious life, if you will. And
Mm.
I think that the big thing is to understand this is that we all have the sort of pathway that we're destined to sort of go down. Um, and sometimes it's just a matter of taking that initial step to kind of go to go forward. And if absolutely there's things like adversity and challenges that will come into our way. But when we talk about that pathway to success, for as an example, it is very individualized. So the route I take will be very different than yours, Scott, or the next person, so on and so forth. But ultimately, we still got to take that step. We still got to move forward. And so really we love sort of encouraging individuals to do that. And so and I know you got a ton of books behind you there, and you've authored a number of books on the topic and helping individuals to again empower success is one of the first ones I can see there over your shoulder. So maybe as a starting point, Scott, I can get you to let our audience know a little bit about your work that you do and what got you to this point, and why Japan. That's a good place to start. How do you end up in Japan?
That is a good question, Ashley. So, originally, I'm not far from where you are right now. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and born and raised there. And then I moved out to Vancouver, Victoria City when I finished university, moved out there to find work. So, um, once I got out there, I was working as an electrical engineer. And after doing that for about 6 or 7 years, I thought, I think it was time for a change. There was just something inside me that was stirring for something different,
Mhm.
and I started to put together a plan, right? And the plan started as a journal. The journal led into goal setting, and setting goals for myself led into getting clarity on what my next steps were. Sure, I had an okay job and I was living a pretty good life, and didn't have any reason. I was living in a great place. I didn't have any reason to just run away, and I wasn't running away. I just
Right.
felt like there was something out there that was just, I don't know, bigger, better. I just wanted to try something completely different. And that way of life excites me. Like that's just always something that I've always had a very adventurous spirit. So I love trying new things and I love doing things that are scary. Although in the moment we don't always think that. Some of those scary things is when actually I think that's when we can perform at our best, when we just push
Yes,
through
yes,
it. But
yes,
anyway, yeah, what happened is that, yeah, I got clear on my goals and I had three goals, and three those goals were the first one is I wanted to become an author, and that's something that I'd always wanted since I was probably in junior high school when I started writing. And obviously today that came true, but there's probably a deeper story behind that, I'm sure. The second thing is I wanted to become a better human being. So, in order to achieve that endless goal, because it's never something you're finished with, I
sure,
was just at the time, I was going through I guess, a period of reinventing my life where I was started to read a lot of books, self-help books by Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, you name it. I would go to the library or the bookstore. This was
Mhm.
even before we had Amazon and before the internet was around. But
Right,
I
right,
started getting all these books on, how to, yeah, make yourself better, how to empower yourself, or how to have a great life. And I love those books because every time I read one, just a chapter of one of those books, gave me new ideas, and it just made me start to think differently about life itself, how I
yep,
was living my life,
hmm,
and better yet, how could I make like a greater life, and
right,
again, I mean, I think I always had a pretty good life. I can't speak for, most people. I think we all have to frame up what that means for ourselves. But for me, it just meant like, okay, life is really good, but what could I be doing more of, like
yep,
how could I be helping more people? How could I be putting myself into a situation where, where I could, yeah, empower myself, empower other people, what could come of that? Like I was always obsessed with the next step. So anyway,
right,
what happened is, ended up making, oh, the third goal, by the way, I went off track a bit, but the third goal was, I wanted to travel around the world.
there we
And
go.
I thought, that could actually be something that's doable within the next year, because I looked at the other two things. I was like, well, writing books, that may take a while.
Mhm.
The life journey of becoming a better human, that's going to take a lifetime. But the third thing, like I made a decision. I was like, I'm going to do this in a year. And once I made the decision, that was it. Um,
Nice,
Things
nice,
started opening up. Doors started opening up. Opportunities. I started meeting people that had already done these things. Like they were coming back from Thailand and Indonesia, and I was just meeting them sometimes randomly on the street or in a bar or something. But um, I think that there's something to be said. Once you put something in motion, you
yes,
start to pull that energy towards you. You start to attract that thing that you want. And I truly believe that because I lived it. I proved it again and again, actually, that does happen. So,
wow,
and
wow,
once I made the decision that I was going to go overseas, I thought, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go to Thailand because that looks like a really cool place. And, they've got these golden Buddhas there and temples. And I'll just go there and it's hot and they've got elephants. And I thought, looks like a good place to start my journey. Right. And that was it. That was my plan.
right,
Pack up my bags, go to Thailand, and I was going to take it from there. A few months into this plan, I came across an advertisement in the newspaper that said teach English in Japan, apply now. So I did, and I got the job. So after that happened, my so-so plan now had a definitive plan where I now had a job to go to. The
yes,
company ended up bringing myself and a couple other people over from Vancouver to Osaka, and they set us up with like a homestay and a car. And I had,
yeah,
I was doing a completely different work. I went from becoming an engineer, crawling around in the mud, hooking up live power,
oh wow,
which I don't think they could have paid us enough for that, but I was doing it. And suddenly I'm working out of a coffee shop or working in a business and getting invited to these parties and just getting paid to teach people how to speak English. And the money was like three times as much. So I was like, I think I'll stay here for a while. Anyway,
well, well,
yeah. But that's what happened.
well,
And that was way back in, yeah.
no, I was gonna say, sorry, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I really appreciate how intentional you were about the things that you wanted for yourself, and very clear. These are three goals, and recognizing the sort of the prioritizations to what happens when, because I think when we sort of do that, and as you experience, things just sort of fall into place. You meet the right people, the right opportunities come up, things align, and it certainly sounds like that's exactly what
Mhm.
happened for you.
That is what happened, yeah. And I think that the key there is that I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I had a pretty good idea what I wanted. And again, I wasn't clear on what the outcome would be, how I was going to get there. I think that's what holds a lot of people back is that, they want to know that there's a guarantee at the end of this thing. They want to know that, they spend money on something, there's going to be a return on their investment. And then you can frame that up as, if I put time into something, is it going to pay off? And who knows? Like, I mean, you just don't know. But for me, it was just like, I'd make a decision on something and it intuitively, it just felt like the right thing to do. It's like, this is the path that I'm going to take. And
Right.
I'm a big fan of the book, The Road Less Traveled, because I believe, and the poem that goes with that as well, by Robert Frost is like, taking that road less traveled. Like that's the path that I always wanted to be on. I don't know if that was an intentional decision,
Hmm.
but it was the path, because when I looked at the things that I was doing, it's like, wow, like nobody else around me is doing this. Maybe that's why they all think I've lost my mind, like, and so maybe that's how I know I'm on the right path. And by that, I mean,
Right.
like, just moving to the other side of the country and doing things like that. But yeah, something just said to me, like, yeah, that's the way to go. So,
What what I find interesting is when you go down that path, you start to see fewer and fewer people along your journey, right?
mm,
They just that the numbers just naturally dwindle, and that's when you know that you're going down this road on your own. And very much, it's kind of I think of I almost think of like an inventor who's creating something for the very first time, right?
mm,
And
mm,
he's got this passion, or she's got this passion, and working the wee hours of the morning with the lights dim, trying to figure this thing out where everyone else is sleeping, or not even, or thinking they're crazy, or because they can't see what that individual sees. And that's okay, right? I think right off the top, I just talked about the fact that we're all different, right? So that's okay.
mm,
But I think what we have to be careful of is to not be deterred by the fact that we don't have the audiences that are cheering us on at the wee hours of the morning, and thinking that,
mm.
well, this might be a waste of time because no one's here with me. Like to persevere and continue to push through, because I think that's where you find your path to greatness.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, because there's certainly many moments where you're going to have imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
self-doubt,
Yeah.
uncertainty, and you're going to feel like nobody's around to support you, and maybe they're not. Who knows? Like that could be the way it is. But I don't know. It's like either push forward with your plan or go back to doing what you're doing, and I'm
Mhm.
not saying either way is the wrong way. It's just like you just have to decide, what is for me, like if I push forward with something and, it's really hard. The work is hard. Like you said, you end up putting in long hours in the day. And I've had many long, long days in my publishing business where there was
Mhm.
no guarantee of success and there still
Right.
isn't.
Right.
Um, but then I look at my other options. It's like, well, my options are to go back and do what I was doing before, and that's not an option at all, really. It's like if I'm on this path, every time I keep moving forward, I go through another door, and the door behind
Right.
me closes shut, which means
Right.
that you're not going back. You just got to keep going forward,
Right.
and
That's right.
that's just I think the mindset, the mentality around that has a lot to do with it as well.
Yes.
Whether or not you continue forward, and there's nothing wrong with giving up either if you feel like this isn't the thing for me, so I am going to try something different. Maybe
Right.
sometimes we're pushing towards something and actually it's maybe it's not the best path, but
Yep.
you can always go back and you can take a few steps back, recalculate your progress, and then take some time to think about your journey, but
Yep. Yep.
then start moving down that next path.
What's interesting with that is oftentimes individuals attribute that to failing or quitting or giving up, right?
Mm,
And I think you explained it beautifully. Evaluating and doing a reevaluation and making the determination. Yeah, this isn't where I want to be. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would say
mm,
staying on the path is a sign of failure, because that's not where you're meant to be, right? And you're wasting your time
mm.
and energy there. So I'm really glad you made that point. I wonder if you could just sort of talk about the importance of timing in our lives, and I say that only because earlier you talked about say individuals that put in X number of time, energy, hours into something, and they're expecting that it naturally will produce something or naturally become fruitful in that manner. And that always oftentimes isn't the case. And sometimes, what you gain comes from something else indirectly. I oftentimes use that analogy, with the Karate Kid, where that wax on, wax off. Here he is painting fences. Now recognize he's learning a martial arts move as an example. And so I don't know if you could sort of talk about that, because I think and why I think that's important is I think that when we talk about quitting as an example, when people aren't seeing those immediate results or not seeing that maybe this thing I'm doing is setting me up for two moves later, they just stop and go, oh, what's the point, and to give up.
Yeah. One of the things I've coached a lot of people around book publishing, writing books, a little bit of life coaching, but I'm not a life coach. But, I've written a lot of books around the topic of, yeah, psychology, self-help. And part of what I do is actually teaching people how to, not so much the writing process, but like, now you've got a book, now what, and publishing it and getting it out there. And um, I think when I started on this way back when, I just started with a pencil in my hand and a piece of paper.
Mm,
A decade and a bit later, I mean, yeah, I've got a few books out there, but it was I had put in, I think I was just putting in the time every day. Like I dedicated 2 or 3 hours a day to writing and learning a little bit about book publishing. And I just did this every day for a very long time. And I still do, by the way. Like, maybe I'm not learning things about, how to like, write a book faster, but I'm learning things about like funnels and how to build an e-commerce store, like things that I wouldn't have been doing a decade ago. My point of it
right.
is that I had to start with something, and it just kept building. And so this is where the 10,000 hour, I think it's a rule, the 10,000 hour rule comes in, where it's like
Mhm.
you put in your 10,000 hours, like the Karate Kid. Well, he put in a lot of, maybe it wasn't 10,000 hours, but he did a lot of those circles,
Yes.
a lot of waxing on and
Yes.
waxing off, right? And sure, there's and I love that movie, by the way. Watched it like 300 times,
Mhm.
but and you can see the frustration where he couldn't see the point of it all. It's just like doing all
Yes.
these movements until he actually had to prove that it actually worked, when they had the
Yes.
test, and Mr. Miyagi tried to knock him down or something. But that's the thing, is like you may be working towards something, and maybe you've put in 100 hours and 500, and then eventually, like you are going to get to the point where you feel like what's the use of this? Why am I, let's just say like okay, I published book number 3 or book number 4. I'm still not making money and selling
Right.
books. And
Right.
at that point where you're thinking, is this really for me? Like, should I keep going? And I can't tell you at what point it was that I just decided to not give up and go back. Is like, this has to be the way. And I just kept pushing forward. Now, whether that's a strategy, or I think the mindset behind it is just like, again, it comes back to that intuition too. Like the intuition was just telling me, like, I know this is what I was destined to do.
Right.
So I'm just going to push forward with, like, say, the next book and see what happens in the next book. And maybe there is a point where I would have just said, okay, well, I'm still not, still not successful at this, right? So, but then we have to define, what does success mean for each individual, because I know a lot of people who made a lot of money and they still don't consider themselves successful. And I know other
That's true.
people who didn't make any money, they love what they're doing and they feel successful, right? So,
That's something.
again, I can't tell anybody what success is. They just have to frame it out for themselves. And for
Yeah.
me, it wasn't about making the money. I mean, that did come a little bit later, where I started, I did replace my full-time job income with my book money. But again, that actually wasn't, like, that wasn't the goal either. The goal was just to write books that ended up getting into a lot of people's hands to help them to live a greater life, and that was, so anyway, but here's the thing, is like, just going back to the practice, the discipline, right?
Right.
You do have to, first of all, be doing something that you feel, I don't like to use the word passionate about, because I think passion is like motivation. It can kind of come and go, like,
Yes.
because the thing that you're feeling passionate about, like, if you, whether you're writing music or you're or writing a book, you may feel passionate about it in the beginning. And when it gets really hard, you're not going to be feeling that way anymore. That's when the discipline comes in and you've got to really push forward. to put in the time to learn the tools. And for me, it's either I'm learning how to do it or I'm outsourcing it to somebody who knows how to do it. Because what it really comes down to is skill set, right? And
Yes, yes.
one of the most important things that I learned is that um, I don't have to go back to school and get a degree to triple my income and do all this. And again, like it wasn't all about the money, but it's about the time you're putting in
Right,
to
right.
learn a certain skill so you can achieve a goal, right? And for me, that was what it was really is like I realized, oh, if I learn these skills, I can actually, well, I can coach people on how to do these things, which means I could create a new job for myself, I could become a coach in this field, or I could actually build a business from this as well. So I started seeing a lot of opportunities come from putting in the time and
Yes,
learning things, and I think this
yes,
is where, like knowledge in and of itself doesn't really amount to anything if you don't actually apply it, right? So,
yes.
um, and I think that's where it's like if you want to achieve something, just figure out what the skill is that you need to get that thing done, and whether or not you're the one that has to learn the skill, or you can just find somebody who can, who don't knows the skill, and you can hire them to do it. Maybe and this could be coming back to like, if you're like the founder of your business, and of course you're going to hire other people for it. But
Yep.
anyway, kind of getting off track a little bit with the business discussion, but that was
Right.
kind of how my mindset started to, I think, build around this whole thing was like just coming back to how much time I was putting into my business,
Yes.
understanding that there was no guarantee of success, but I really enjoyed learning the things that I wanted to learn for like, so I wasn't back in high school where it's like we had to take the courses that they offered and that was it. And I
Yeah,
don't think
right,
I
right,
wanted to take
right,
any
right.
of them,
Right.
you know. Yeah.
Well, and I know you sort of we're going down the business path, but I think the two are related, and that's kind of why you naturally went there. So I think
Mm,
it was very much relevant. Uh, I know one of the things that you talk a lot about is confidence, and I think the things that we just described, they do wonders in terms of building your confidence. And for me,
mm,
when I sort of think about ways that we build our confidence, almost like it's like I think of the idea of sort of creating momentum, right? So you think of a snowball that's coming down a hill and it starts to get
mm,
bigger and bigger, and that's like our confidence growing and growing and growing, and to the point where the things that we doubted, we're like, yeah, sure, let's give it it's no shot, no problem, let's go. And and that's where the value of sort of putting that time in, right? And
mm,
and recognizing that the time isn't wasted. It's contributing towards something. Maybe not the thing you think, and there's another
mm.
skill being developed in the process, but it absolutely is. And so I wonder if you sort of talk about just maybe other ways that we can build our confidence.
Yeah. I think confidence too just comes from taking action, doing things, because confidence is very similar to, like, let's just say imposter syndrome, for example. So a lot of people will not do something, or they'll feel intimidated to do something because they feel like they're not good enough to do it. They don't have the
Right,
confidence to do it, right? Is what
right,
they may say. Um, I rarely felt confident in most situations I was put in where I felt like I didn't deserve to be there, or I didn't have the skill to be there, right? So just going back, just not a book related topic, but back when I started to work as an engineer, actually, and I was given a job to run with like 10 other guys. I'd never run a job before with 10 other guys and like managing other people. And, we're working with live power and millions of dollars worth of equipment. And I'm suddenly like this new kid on the block who was just given this big responsibility. Well, I wanted to quit,
hmm
and just say, nope, I'm just going to go work for someone else who's not going to give me this responsibility. And if I did that, maybe I could have found another job. But then it came down to, well, what if I actually take this, position? And they called that a promotion. I didn't think it was, but but what if I just take this position, run with it, and see what happens? Like, what if I actually do get good at this?
right,
And yeah, in the beginning, it was intimidating. Giving other people directions, making blueprints and diagrams and all this stuff. But over the course of like the next like 3 months, 6 months in the year, we finished the job, and I looked back on my progress. Like I started off with having no confidence, imposter syndrome. I didn't want to do the job.
yeah,
Ended up with finishing the job, made
love
a
it.
lot of mistakes, by the way. I almost fried myself twice.
Mm.
And at the end of it, we finished the job. It was a little bit over budget, but the thing is like it was done. Like, mission accomplished. So here's the thing: is like then I was given a second job, right? And that one was even scarier than the first one. So looking back on the first one, I was like, well, that was that was like a big job I had to take. It was like this big government job, a lot of moving parts and everything, but we did it. Second job was even bigger than that one. And the thing is, like every time I was given that challenge, it's like I always had the choice to just, sure, I could have quit. But I was like, but if I do, where does that leave me? Now I'm going to
Right.
be back. I'm not going to grow from quitting, right? And that was just the way I saw it. And what I realized is like I never had confidence in the beginning with any of these things, but that just developed over time. The confidence was just a day by day thing, and the confidence was just waking up and showing up. To be honest, like
Yeah, that's right.
that
That's
was,
right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
even the idea of being confident or not afraid to even take that first step. You talk about being action, right? It is very much about
yeah.
action, and so if we can take that first step, at, regardless if we know what the outcome is or not, because I think that's part of what sometimes holds people back. They don't want they want to see the whole picture on day one, and sometimes that's just not known. It's not available, and we have to be comfortable with the unknown and still confident enough to take that first step. And so that's certainly something that comes into play here. Um, Now you've got a concept about doing the hard things first, which is one of the title of one of your books, and I'd love to touch on that only because um, I actually in my mind sort of think of it quite differently in that if you got a bunch of tasks to do, you start with the easy stuff, the low hanging fruit to kind of give yourself
Hmm.
a little bit of momentum that you can go, okay, and then then you can tackle the big stuff. So I'd love to sort of hear your concept on that. It's interesting.
Yeah. You have a good point there, though. Yeah. And actually, so the concept of you do the hard things first, there's a couple of things there. First of all, the first book in that series, we have the fourth book coming out in a few weeks, but the first book is on how to overcome procrastination, right?
Okay.
But what it's really about is building trust with yourself. And that's where it comes back to doing the hard things first is about building that trust with yourself because you need to show up to do these things. But you have a point though. So just before I get into that though, one of the things that I did is in order for me to deal with my procrastination at the time, I made a long list of all the things that I was putting off in my life. Hard things, easy things, like it didn't matter what it was. If it was unfinished, it went on the list. I looked at the list and then I realized, okay, well, the hardest thing on this list, I'm probably not going to do that because that's going to take me quite a bit of time and I'm just going to procrastinate more on it. So I did actually go with the easier things on the list because to your point, momentum is the key, right?
Yes, yes.
So yeah, you don't have to wake up every day and do the hardest thing, but if you can just wake up every day and just do one thing that's on your, call it your to-do list or, your action list, then just do that thing, right? Now, what I do every night is I'll make a list of three things that I want to do the following day. I don't always get all three of them done, but of those three things on the list, I'll have one really hard thing, one thing that's actually I can get a quick win around, one thing that
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's easy, but I can get that quick win. Maybe it's something I can do in 15 or 30 minutes. And the second or the third thing can just be like one of those things where I can just kind of take it or leave it, right? So if I do the first thing, I'll do the second thing, and sometimes I'll leave that hard thing for the end, but the thing is though is that yeah, you want to start getting those wins because if you wake up every day and you just do one thing on your list
Yep.
and you do that once a day for a year, say, well, you just done a whole bunch of stuff, at the end of the year, and that's a lot of momentum. And maybe, who knows, 20 of those things were like really hard things that you were putting off for a long time. For me, um, I think I did like three or four of those. And by the way, just a class, it's like to frame up what a hard thing is. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody has
Yeah.
to do what they
Sure.
want. For
That's
me, it
good.
was
Yeah,
like,
good. Yeah, thank you for doing it. Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it was like decluttering my room, like that was just a mess, and I left it like that for a very long time, so
Hard. Yep. I would. That's
yeah,
hard.
yeah,
I would
yeah,
share
it
that one.
is. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think what and I started talking about intentionality early on, but this is again very
Mm.
intentional when you make that list and commit to it. So it's not only just making the list; it's actually a three-pronged process here. You gotta make that list, commit to that list, and then take the action, like we sort of talked about earlier. I think those are some wonderful steps with just dealing with procrastination, right? If we want to procrastinate less, be very intentional about how we attack things, and if we can pick that one thing, commit to doing that, and sticking to it, I think we're well on our way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Clarity is the key. So if you're procrastinating on something, identify what that thing is. You probably know what it is. make a list of steps that you need to finish this thing, and then just do one of those things on the list every day. Just like if you were a project manager, right?
Mhm.
You got your project, you got your steps to you need to implement in order to get that project done. Do one of those steps every day.
Yeah, there we go. And I think that's the key. And we're interesting creatures as human beings, right? Because we see that little step. Oh, and we progress. And again, we
Mm.
talk about the momentum and how that's built up, and so that's awesome. So I gotta ask, Scott, how many books are you up to now?
Got one coming out in a few weeks. So that's probably going to be 41, maybe, I think, somewhere around there.
Wow,
So yeah, 41. I think Do the Hard Things First is published in 17 languages so far. So
amazing.
it's building momentum. But again, it was one of those things where I just had an idea for a concept for the book, put it together, put it out there. I didn't have any expectations, but did the best I could with it, and people just resonated with the topic and the I think the title too says it all. So yeah.
I love it. I wonder if you could think back to book number one, going into that
Mm.
process, and the difference between that and book number 41.
Wow, yeah. Things are completely different, I think, from way back when, because I mean, um, I started publishing when Amazon just first launched their self-publishing platform, and before that, I was actually looking for a publisher. But yeah, going back to writing that first book, um, I wanted to write a book for a long time, and I was actually a fiction author. Hadn't published anything yet, but I had written like a few books, and then I think it just came down to like, do I want to do the fiction, or do I want to go with the self-help stuff? Because the self-help stuff was really calling to me. And, I just read dozens of books on like everything. And I just felt like, well, I didn't feel like I was ready, but it's like I had to take this step. So I took the time just to draft out a book, and I took 3 years to write it. And the process was really long because I wanted to be a really good writer. So I just went through everything very meticulously. I wasn't using, we didn't have AI. We didn't really have that many tools at all. I just had my computer with a Word document, and
Yep. Yep.
that was it, right? So it was a very laborious process, took a long time. But I think what I learned from that though is that um, first of all, yeah, I mean, I think I put out enough books to say, I learned how to write well for a nonfiction author, but writing fiction was completely different.
Right.
But when I look at the books that I'm putting together now, I've got the process drilled down to a very fine science, I think, where,
Okay.
I'm using some AI tools, using technology to speed up the process, but you
Sure.
could probably get a book written and published in about, I would say 2, maybe 3. Yeah, I would say about 3 months is the average. So,
Nice. And look, the idea of concept all the way through to finished product, I think, especially the upfront work where you're developing the concept, that takes the most amount of time, right? Because you really want to make sure it's
mm,
laid out, and everything else, well, I would imagine, sort of falls into place after that.
that's a good point. Yeah. And so that was the piece that I didn't mention, is that I spent a lot of my practice actually was spent in the online, like the publishing space, looking at other people's books, reading lots of books, not just reading them for the sake of reading them, but kind of pulling them apart to see how they were structured. Why did this author write it this way? And, I look at things like, their SEO, the keywords, the categories. I dissect everything actually,
Right.
because I want to just see like, what is my, I don't know, my competition up to, how are they launching their books? What are they doing differently than I am? So
Right.
I think all of those things has led to, kind of like my obsession with, yeah, right. I love publishing books. I still like the writing process, but I am more like I love just creating products and putting them out there in the marketplace because I like to see if how they're going to help people. So
Got you. Yeah, no, I think that for me, I think is the piece that it's really, it charges you, right? Like you've created something. Not just, I'm sure you want to write a book. Absolutely, want to write a book. I want to, create this product. Absolutely, but to then know it's impacting people or making a difference to people or changing people's lives, right? They're not just
mhm.
words on paper anymore. They're much more than that. Have you gotten that kind of feedback at all from individuals?
All the time, yeah, I get a lot of email from people, ways that the books help them. They've recommended it to their friends and family. I think CEOs of companies that have recommended it to their employees. Some of the time, sometimes they made it recommended reading some of the books. So that was kind of neat. Again, not things that I was always planning for, but just thrilled by the fact that people actually just, and here's the thing too, you never really know who's going to pick up your book or
That's
read your
right.
blog post, or like you just don't know the right person. And the right person, I mean like somebody who has influence, who can actually say, hey, I just read this book by so and so. Or it doesn't matter if there's a book or a piece of music, whatever. Like if somebody's recommending it, and everybody, other people try it, and then they start to pass it on to somebody else. um, I think that's a
Oh.
big, that's a powerful form of marketing, right? So
Well, look, Scott, congratulations on all the success in that regard, and really being for making a difference to individuals. But then also, I'm going to steal one of your book topics, being able to relaunch your life, right, and be able
mm,
to make that transition to a whole other side of the world, in a whole in a whole different way than you maybe thought planned, and being very intentional about what you're doing, but then having the type of success that you've had. So congratulations on that. I think that's wonderful. For our listeners that want to maybe connect with you or maybe learn more about your work that you do, what can we tell them? What can we tell them, or where can we send them?
sure, yeah, they can go to scottallanbooks.com, where we have a store. We're selling everything direct on there, and scottallanpublishing.com as well. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I have a newsletter as well. People can sign up for that. Once they land on the sites, they can sign up for the newsletter too. And we're in the middle of rebooting it. But
Okay.
yeah, we got yeah, I always feel like I'm starting things over again, like I always feel like every day is a new day. And I don't let success get in my way. In fact, if anything, I'm like, I've got to do more. There's still, 6 billion people out there that we need to reach. So
Awesome. I love that mentality. I think it's a great one to have, and you're definitely on your way because you took that first step. So congrats again on doing so. Thanks again for making the time, Scott. This has been awesome, and all the best.
thanks for having me on the show. It's been great.
Back, we are here on the podcast, and thanks to Scott for being here, and congrats on taking that first step that took you all the way to the other side of the world. His message resonates with the idea that true confident success comes from consistent action. You've got to take that consistent action, embrace the challenges, and push through self-imposed limitations. By committing to one small step each day towards our goals, we can build momentum and redefine what audacious living means to us. For more insights and inspiration from Scott, feel free to connect with him directly via the contact details in the show notes. Engage with his content and dive into his books. There's a whole lot to choose from as you embark on your own audacious journey of personal growth and fulfillment. Certainly check out the special offers and products available from Scott, including exclusive resources, courses, and tools to support your self-improvement journey. Visit his website for more information on how to access these valuable resources. There's lots of them to choose from. There's no doubt about it. Thank you for tuning in to the Audacious Living Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider following, subscribing, and sharing with others. Of course, that is how we continue to grow this platform and impact others who are seeking to live their most audacious lives. Together, let's continue to inspire and empower each other on this journey of growth and transformation. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.